What is the future of business coaching? Well, that's the question posed by one of the most successful and sought-after executive and career coaches, Daryl W. Gurney. He's an author, a speaker, a spiritual counselor, and an entrepreneur. He is the founder of CareerGuide.com and TheBack40.com. Welcome, Daryl.
Thank you.
Now, in this theme, how much of your coaching is about self-understanding and how much is about external communications? That's a pretty big question. What were you seeking to find out here?
Well, given the nature of our panel here is the future of business coaching, coaching today is a word that's kind of thrown around left and right. So as we look at the future of business coaching, what is that? Let's talk to experts. The question here was really just starting to look at, well, what are the pieces? Are we dealing more with the coachee or the player really understanding themselves? Are we dealing with how they are dealing with issues and things in the external world, people they work with, or the impressions or the effects that they have?
Now, you had a really interesting group of panelists that served on this board. Tell us a little bit about them.
I'm actually just blown away by the varied backgrounds, the levels of expertise, and you see where coaching shows up in so many ways. You have people who were former counseling psychologists. You have people who are working with senior level executives. You have people who are, I guess I would call more on the holistic side of things.
So, Daryl, in your executive summary, you had three big takeaways, and self-understanding was a huge theme throughout, right?
Well, it really was. Knowledge of yourself and your external communications rise together. You can't have one without the other. The whole idea of personal branding. In the corporate world, it's important to distinguish yourself. As entrepreneurs, any individual wants to distinguish themselves. What we started to see here was that you got to have the self-knowledge before you can consciously manage or put out the brand. And then what really got juicy was, what are the lines between the boundaries of coaching and other ways that people achieve self-understanding?
I love all this. This is so interesting. So help me understand what is meant by external communications here.
Well, it includes things like your emails and what you're saying and everything. But it's like, what are you putting out? What are you putting out into the world? What are people affected by around you? One of those being brand. Cody's just great. He's always one of the first to jump in on these discussions. He brought it up. You can't really do one without the other. And Michaela came in, basically, she's working a lot with internal employees, but it's like whether they're at the top or whether they're in the middle of the machine, so to speak, that self-understanding is going to be arising at the same time as what they're putting out. They come together.
Now, Daryl, you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but when you're doing all this self-understanding, how do you start to differentiate between coaching versus counseling?
It came up early. Again, Cody was one of the first to distinguish, hey, we have to be clear of what is coaching, what is counseling, because, it's really interesting, even with some of my clients I'm working with right now, as they go into their organization and they're letting people know they're working with an executive coach. The first reaction is, there something wrong? So starting to distinguish coaching as being something that great players do. There's still a lot of stigma out there, or ideas that if somebody needs a coach, then maybe they're not capable or able to do it on their own. Because sometimes people will think coaching is therapy, and we need to make clear that there's certain lines where coaching fits and certain lines where more therapeutic or other modalities are what's important. For the legal reasons, because you definitely as a coach don't want to be held to something that wasn't in your wheelhouse, so to speak, but also for the best service of the client, getting the support that they need if it's not in the realm of per se coaching. Branding, I think, is becoming more and more critical in terms of how do you distinguish yourself. Look, organizations have a brand. And people then relate. It's funny, you say a tagline from a famous brand, and there's almost an emotion. There's certain values associated with that. And so what's been happening over the last 15, 20 years is people beginning to realize that as they're going to distinguish themselves from all the other executives, all the other people out there seeking to make a difference, how do they evoke that? How do they evoke a certain sense of values when their name or their tagline comes up. People were basically saying, again, you have to know yourself, though, because you're creating a brand, whether you know it or not.
I like how Crystal said it here, right? Your personal brand is the interior expressed authentically.
Absolutely. Really, basically, what she's saying is the authentic you is going to be coming out there.
You had a lot of really great people contributing great messaging. Which three really stood out to you as being really involved in this conversation?
Brent, the great thing about Brent is that he was actually a counseling psychologist before he became a coach. Patrick, jumped in on saying, hey, we can't be psychiatrists here. David was really contributing a ton around the whole branding idea. We got to pick three, but I got to tell you, this was the most engaging conversation that it's hard to identify three specific people because there were so many great contributions made in this discussion.
Gosh, Daryl, you've done such a great job. Thank you so much for walking us through all this. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's a deep thinker, and he's exactly who we needed to head this panel. Thank you. What's coming up next, Daryl?
Where are the lines of coaching? Are they hard and fast, or are they gray? Are there other modalities that can be brought into what's called coaching, depending on the comfort level of the coach, the comfort level of the player? So I'm really excited about the next theme.
I am too, Daryl. Thanks a lot for spending time with us again. Daryl W. Gurney.